Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely. And parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/getstarted. That's GREENLIGHT.com/getstarted.
Shrek doesn't make his name up on the spot.
He does. Rewatch the scene.
Yeah. The one other time someone says his name is in the first act when the donkey introduces him to someone else. It kind of makes sense.
There you go. Breathe, buddy. Breathe.
Oh, I really think we should just call the hospital.
Yeah, well,
Just
we
like
can't.
that.
So just keep the ice pack on.
Hey, guys. What happened to you?
Yeah, you look like you got beat up pretty bad.
Yeah, we did. We did. So you know how this week's episode is about Yevgeny Prigozhin, the Russian oligarch who tried to overthrow the government?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, we got to thinking, hey, maybe that's what we need to do as well.
Overthrow the Russian government?
No. Overthrow the more popular podcasts than ours. You know, like take their listeners and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Establish dominance.
Right. Well, that's not how podcasting works. And it seems it didn't go too well for you. So who did you try to overthrow?
I was call her daddy.
Oh, yeah. No. Those hosts could definitely kick our asses.
Sophia lifted me over her head and threw me through a window.
No, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
So strong.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts, because this is the internet and that's how it works now. I'm Noah, and I'm going to be commanding this unit today, but to win this battle, I'll need other people to do all the fighting for me. First up, two men who put the sin in mercenary, Heath and Cecil.
Okay, our tandem push-ups are sinful for sure.
Caliente. And
Right?
mercenarying is a lot of triangle stuff. Just a lot of
it
triangles.
is.
For sure, yeah.
And also joining us tonight, two men who put the irks in mercs, Tom and Eli.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, in a war of attrition with me, I guarantee that you will want to go home first.
Well, I'm just saying, are we there yet is a very relevant question when you're going to kill civilians, Noah.
Jesus
Okay, I
It
need
is,
to know
though. It is.
where to
It's
start.
true. And, of course, references to war crimes can only mean one thing. It's time to thank those patrons. Patrons.
Oh, my God.
If it weren't for you,
I thought
Eli
you were
would
going to
be
say
making...
auto ads for sure.
No, but if it wasn't for you patrons, Eli would be making war crime jokes in even less appropriate venues. So thank you. And, of course, if you'd like to join their ranks, be sure to stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Cecil, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about Yevgeny Prigozhin. I think I
All
said
right.
that
So,
right.
Tom, you read the wiki, presumably. Are you ready to weave this tale?
Well, I got nothing to do for the next 45 minutes, so what the hell?
Hell yeah, man. So why did you pick Yevgeny Prigozhin for this week's topic?
Well, you know, during this increasingly impossible to take seriously timeline, just a few scant months ago, you may recall when, for about a day, a former Russian hot dog vendor turned international mercenary led the first, albeit stunningly brief, armed march on Moscow since World War II. And look,
It's an all brief hot dog.
I do not know if it's right to call Prigozhin's trajectory a rise to power or a descent into power-crazed madness, but I do know it is one hell of a story that, much like pretty much all of the events of the last 7 or 8 years, is so absurd that if the story were turned into your freshman creative writing teacher, it would be handed back with a strong request for rewrites.
Right. And in this case, maybe a meeting with the school psychiatrist.
You're right. Well, or in Russian schools, they just give it back to you with polonium all over.
Sure,
it.
yeah, no, that too. That too.
Well, let's begin. Yevgeny Prigozhin was born in 1961 in Leningrad, in what was then the Soviet Union. His mother was a hospital nurse, his father a mining engineer. He had no siblings, and by the time he was 9, he had no father either, since he had died. He was sent to Ukraine for several years of his childhood to live with his great uncle, a Soviet scientist who made young Yevgeny work in an open pit uranium mine
Jesus.
like, for science.
Hey, guys, the canary's alive, but I think it's a pterodactyl again. I don't know what that means. Is that bad?
Eventually, Yevgeny's mother remarried, and his stepfather introduced Yevgeny to cross-country skiing, which Yevgeny preferred to open pit uranium mining, I guess. And for a hot minute, he thought about pursuing, a lucrative cross-country skiing career by going pro, even going so far as to graduate from the hallowed halls of Leningrad Sports Boarding School number 62. That is the real name, by the way. But an injury sidelined those plans. So the someday soldier of fortune became, for a time, a fitness trainer at a children's school.
I hate how Russia always has to one-up us, right? We elect a game show host. They have to make a gym teacher the head of their military. It never ends.
Well, I guess this dude quit a couple of cross-country things, huh? Okay, all right.
Now, when Yevgeny was 18, he was caught stealing, and he was sentenced to 2.5 years working at a chemical plant in Novgorod.
It still sounds more fun than cross-country skiing.
It does
Jesus.
sound, it's fucking awful.
Especially in Russia, that must take forever.
Jesus Christ. Now, sporting a resume as a uranium miner, a chemical plant slave laborer, and, children's fitness trainer, Yevgeny left prison and promptly joined a gang, where he majored in robbery and choking and beating women. In 1981, at the age of 21, Yevgeny was arrested and sentenced to 12 years at a high-security penal colony for robbery, theft, fraud, and involving minors in criminal activity.
Yeah, the kids in his gym class just thought he had some really outside-the-box ideas about what basketball was, but no.
Little Piotr is like, I thought dodgeball and bowling were played with different equipment, coach.
Once imprisoned, Yevgeny was supposed to be locked down in solitary confinement. But that was not going to suit him, so he somehow, and the wiki offers no explanation as to how this is possible, violated his solitary confinement on a regular basis?
What?
Yeah, I guess then that means that at high security Soviet prisons, they ran solitary confinement like on the honor system.
Okay. Or maybe he was just like really committing to the imaginary friend bit, and the guards were like, fuck this. No.
Anyway, Yevgeny just didn't do the solitary thing. Instead, he lived in Gen Pop with everyone else, reading intensively and finding work as a lathe operator, cabinet maker, and receiving training at a vocational school, all of which were actually much better opportunities than he had been afforded while he was not in a maximum security prison. Now, in 1990, after serving 9 years, Yevgeny was released, and he promptly enrolled in and then failed out of the Leningrad Chemical and Pharmaceutical Institute. Since his dreams of pharmacy had been dashed, he did the only natural next step, and he embarked upon a career selling hot dogs with his parents at an open-air market. Now, that's what the wiki said, and then I swear this next part is true because the next thing the wiki indicates is that, quote, the rubles were piling up faster than his mother could count them. End quote.
Really?
And there's no indication here at all as to how or why the prison-hardened uranium miner was pulling in fat cash selling open-air hot dogs. But there you have it.
Well, maybe they were more profitable because he could cook the dogs on his radioactive skin, right? So they had lower overhead.
Okay, I'm pretty sure he grabbed a big pile of something before he failed out of Drugs University of Leningrad, or whatever the fuck that was. That's clearly what it was like. I was raking it in with grilled cheese sandwiches as my campus job too, but it wasn't the sandwiches making the rubles.
Now, when the Soviet Union fell, Prigozhin saw room for capitalistic opportunity, and he leveraged that sweet hot dog money to break into the grocery business, which from all accounts was quite lucrative for him. But also, by all accounts, he was at the same time setting up shop in the gambling business. And here I feel like I should remind you all that Walter White had a string of very successful car washes as well.
Right, yes.
Working with Boris Spector, a name that isn't highlighted in blue as a link on Wikipedia, so he's certainly a nobody, and some guy other than that, whose name also doesn't matter, named Igor, Prigozhin became the CEO of Spectrum CJSC, which put up the first casinos in St. Petersburg, before branching off into other very legitimate and not at all organized crime-related businesses, such as construction and foreign trade.
Oh, yeah.
Probably not incidentally, in 1991, Vladimir Putin was chairman for the supervisory board for casinos and gambling.
Do you guys think in the early days of gangstering, he tried to work hot dogs in as like a theme? Like, was he like, tell me Mr. Mustard? Or was he like sick of it and went the opposite direction? What do you think?
100%. I am the dog father. Come sit.
Frank Lucas.
No, you're good. No, you're good. No, I see
John
the freshman.
Brody.
Like it.
What was it?
Close. I just see the freshman creative.
Oscar Mayer Lansky. That's the thing. It's a
Sure.
hot dog, and
I
then he's an
don't
old
know
timey gangster.
Who that is?
It's the two things that Eli said earlier.
Mm-hmm. No, I just see the freshman creative writing teacher at this point handing it back like they've circled Boris Spector and they just write lazy henchman name.
That's true.
You can do better.
In 1995, Yevgeny, perhaps again hearing the siren song of a hot dog water-filled chafing dish, re-entered the restaurant business. Yevgeny opened his first restaurant called Old Custom House in St. Petersburg, and by 1997, a second restaurant would open called New Island. A New Island is a floating restaurant on the waterfront, and it was built on the bones of a rusting boat bobbing itself along on the Vyatka River. This was, or is, upscale Russian dining. Yevgeny, as you might imagine from a guy who is shaping up to be a Sopranos-esque caricature, initially featured striptease shows at his restaurants before getting wind that perhaps that wasn't the kind of fancy, high-end dining that patrons were looking for.
Fun fact, when my parents brought me to St. Petersburg as a kid, because they were teaching in a study abroad program there, the government program coordinators insisted that we have the welcome and goodbye dinner at Old Custom House, which I can attest.
You've been there.
Yeah, not only had terrible food and smelled like all the bars in Heath and I's hometown, but also had an entirely separate dining room for mobsters that we were told not to go into or even look at. So yeah, there's my Kevin Bacon.
In 2001, Vladimir Putin hosted French President Jacques Chirac at New Island, and Yevgeny personally served them both. In 2002, George W. Bush, dim-witted neocon cowboy wannabe war criminal and shoe dodger, also dined at Floating Island, and he was also served personally by Prigozhin. Putin loved New Island so much that he returned yet again in 2003 to celebrate his birthday.
Bet he was allowed to look at any room he wanted when he went there.
At some point around 2003 in our timeline, Prigozhin and Putin began to develop their initial bromance. Prigozhin began to pull away from his ownership interest in the restaurants themselves and began to very suddenly win very lucrative government catering contracts. By 2012, he had won government contracts to feed Russian school children, government workers, and even the Russian military. Contracts which were worth over $1.2 billion with a B in revenue.
Just going to throw this out there. If anyone ever gives me a $1 billion job, I promise I will never try to overthrow your government, no matter how bad you're losing a war. Just employee of the month, everybody. I'm just saying, I'm up.
And since this is in Russia, it is full of scams and corruption. Yevgeny's catering company was called Concord Catering. And in 2018, a company called MSK LLC was paid millions of rubles to cater the annual Heroes of the Fatherland Day banquet at the Kremlin. But if you look that up, MSK LLC has the same phone number as Concord Catering. So they're both just Prigozhin. And basically, he won government catering bids even when he lost them because he just lost the job to another one of his own company. So Yevgeny was becoming fantastically wealthy.
Just get another phone line. What are you doing? Why are you a billionaire?
Cut to Jacob Wall going, yeah, you know what? That seems obvious in retrospect, Heath.
At least in the U.S., our billionaire oligarchs have the decency to get another phone line.
Exactly.
Not Jacob Wool, though.
So Prigozhin did what all former pit miner ex-cons turned oligarchs do, and he moved his family into a heavily fortified compound in St. Petersburg, complete with a full basketball court and helicopter landing pad.
All right.
Prigozhin had acquired much of the oligarch accessory kit by now with his own private jet, pin in that one, and a modest 115-foot yacht. That hot dog money was really stacking
I hope his yacht looked like the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, but like a pontoon. That'd be amazing.
The bun's all wet, and some Japanese guy comes and tries to eat like 12 of them
and he
in a row.
shakes when he does it. He like moves his back.
Now, just in case you think I'm being unfair, no, I'm not. The food he supplied to kids, I'm not. No, fuck this guy. Look, the food he supplied to the kids was of such low quality that in 2019, he caused a dysentery outbreak. And he was so corrupt that in 2022, he won the Corrupt Person of the Year award from, and I love this, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. They have an awards show, guys.
Wow.
Little did they know that it was about to get much, much worse.
All right. Well, I need a minute to take Tom aside and ask if he's doing a Russian essay as revenge for me doing a shipwrecked guys being stupid essay last week.
Yes, I am.
We're going to pause for a little apropos of nothing.
And now, back to the 231st Annual Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Awards.
And we're back. Man, it's been a magical night, Tony. You could say that again, Carl.
So weird, man.
Anyways, now it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for. The Corrupt Person of the Year Award. Here are your nominees. Giuseppe Moltanato, Vito's Car Repair.
Oh, sure, I can fix the car for you. But it would be a shame if someone broke it all over again.
Congressman Maklon Hanskin, South Carolina, 33rd District.
Mr. Mayor, I can get you that highway next week, but it's gonna take a little favor from you, if you know what I mean.
And last but certainly not least, Yevgeny Prigozhin, Russian hot dog stand.
Extra relish. Yes, anything for you, Mr. President.
And the winner is... Oh my god, it finally happened. Yevgeny Prigozhin!
Oh, wow. Oh my God. Yes. I did not have speech planned. Is this thing, it is so heavy to hold it. Okay. So many people must be thanking now. I want to thank Mom and Dad, tireless supporting me in and out of jail. Oh, this is just so much overwhelmed, really. Obviously, Russian mob. Yes, thank you for being such welcoming and amazing collaborators. But no, I could not have done this without the vacuum left by mercantilist capitalism. We brought down the wall, baby. We did it. I love you all. Yes, this is for you.
Fantastic. Well deserved. All right, well, let's take another commercial break, and when we're back, Michael Marshall will give himself Skeptic of the Year once again.
And we're back. When we last left off, Yevgeny Prigozhin was well on his way to being an even less likable restaurateur than Papa John. So what?
He's not that bad.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like Papa John's got a war crime in him somewhere, right? Like, I feel like that's still
he
yet
puts
to
a fucking
come.
ranch dipping sauce in pizza. That's a war crime.
All right, so what's next for Prigozhin?
All right, so listen, most of the rest of the story is going to focus on the Wagner Group, but I need to pause here for a quick aside. In 2016, a network of companies, including a company called the Internet Research Agency, worked very, very hard to try to influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election. And Yevgeny Prigozhin invented, created, and managed the Internet Research Agency. So, remembering back to the massive internet troll and misinformation campaign, that effort, that was spearheaded by a self-made Russian mobster, caterer, and mercenary oligarch.
Okay, if we ever do this back to Russia, we need to pretend the mastermind was like Guy Fieri. Or like, I'm just saying.
Like diners, drive-ins, and hard drives. Yeah.
It was Ronald McDonald.
Papa John.
Now, I should, if I were trying to write something very careful at this point, hem and haw a bit about the murkiness surrounding the foundation of the Wagner Group. But I will not do that. Prigozhin founded that shit in 2014, and although he initially denied it, he later took credit for it, and then, importantly, led the goddamn group. So even if it wasn't his clubhouse on day one, I don't really give a shit, and neither should you. But yes, also, that was his clubhouse.
Yeah, I mean, we already did an episode about Mr. Underwear Poison, so I feel like we've made our bet at this point, Tom. I'm not really a weird hedge.
honestly, of all the violent post-Soviet oligarchs, he's probably the safest one to talk shit about at this point, right?
Yeah, the two guys whose names you made fun of and were like, they don't matter. I'm worried about them. You fucking...
Oh, Boris Spector, yeah.
The Wagner Group is, I don't know, it's not clear at the time of this writing, a paramilitary private army. In case you were wondering, a private army is an unholy synergy of capitalist anti-values parasitically combined with unlimited access to weapons made to form an atrocity and violence gang of hired thugs and killers commissioned by nation states when the need for plausible deniability is necessary and they still want to maximize the amount of murder they can do without having to follow the pesky rules of engagement of government oversight and transparency.
Yeah. Ours is called the CIA.
Right, yes. Shorten it right up.
Yeah, the difference is that ours has a group of oligarchs that run it. That's really the only difference.
obviously.
In 2022, Prigozhin, in fact, took credit for founding the Wagner Group, saying that he had founded it to protect Russia from the, quote, genocide of the Russian population of Donbass, end quote. That is nothing, by the way. That's not true. That's lying propagandist bullshit. Anyway, Yevgeny, former hot dog salesman, built the Wagner Group from scratch, personally sorting and cleaning old weapons and the bulletproof vests himself.
Okay, I get that's like a good photo op or whatever, but that's a terrible use of time for the head of an army, right? Like, I want that guy looking at maps, you know?
Now, officially, the Russian government has denied that they used the Wagner Group to further their interests across a number of theaters, including Syria, across Africa, and in Latin America. But also, the Wagner Group absolutely was used by the Russian government to violently further their interests across a number of theaters internationally.
Well, yeah, it's never a good sign when the denial includes a list of the places where it didn't happen. You know what I'm saying?
Prigozhin, under the guise of a $1 billion military meals contract, was actually tasked with operational and logistical military operations in Africa under the direct guidance of Vladimir Putin.
I love that they're all supposed to be like food service people. Like, I'm imagining mercenary spies, but they're wearing like the old TGI Fridays uniform with the suspenders and the straps and shit.
Exactly. What is their story? It's like, oh no, we're not working for the Russian military. We're just roadies. We're roadies. We follow them around, unload their
Enthusiastic
stuff.
about flair.
The Wagner Group really came into their own, as many of you know, however, when the incompetent and overconfident Russian invaders violated international law and attempted to overtake the sovereign nation of Ukraine by force. The Russian plan was to quickly overrun Kiev, murder the leadership, and then install a puppet government similar to that in Belarus. The plan was foiled by the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people, the backing of the international community, and, of course, the Cold War leadership incompetencies of the Russians. The Russian ground forces suffered heavy losses, and the invasion stalled out, and the Russians needed fresh bodies to throw into the grist mill. Cue the Wagner Group.
They're like, cannon fodder. Come on. They don't use cannons anymore.
Something different. I bet they were mad at Belarus for being Beautiful Russia as the title, and they were like, fuck you.
Yeah,
The Wagner Group, not suffering from the bloat and corruption of the Russian armed forces and not hampered by even attempting to not be maximally evil, fairly quickly distinguished themselves as less incompetent than the standard Russian army. Prigozhin was awarded massive contracts and authority as well as access to sophisticated weapons. And he also used his prison credibility to recruit mercenaries from within the population of the Russian prison. And by 2022, the Wagner Group had grown from several thousand soldiers to more than 50,000 soldiers.
Okay, troops, remember, you're still serving out your solitary confinement sentences. No talking. Quiet down.
Pinky swear.
Fairly swiftly, however, Prigozhin ran into conflict with the Russian Ministry of Defense. Remember that Prigozhin was a caterer who had bought himself an army. He had no explicit authority, no official position, but he did have an enormous allocation of resources with pretty much no oversight of any kind. As battles in Ukraine raged on, Prigozhin just did whatever the fuck he wanted, including releasing videos on social media criticizing the Russian military.
Yeah, the arrogance is amazing. It's not like Prigozhin was doing great himself against Ukraine at that point. Like, He's the guy in the hot dog suit next to the crashed hot dog tank in this case. Being like, okay, whoever it was, just admit you fucked up and Ukraine's beating you.
All right, but he killed the milk crate challenge, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
So criticizing the Russian military that's just not a thing that happened in Russia. You don't publicly criticize the government or the military, at least not without disappearing shortly thereafter. But Yevgeny had the ear of Putin and the most skilled actual military force at play in Ukraine. This clearly gave Prigozhin a sense of security in running his fucking mouth about the incompetence of the Russian leadership, saying, quote, all these bastards ought to be sent to the front barefoot with just a submachine gun, end quote. He called the parliament useless, and he suggested that they too should go to the front. And during the pitched battle for the city of Bakhmut, the Wagner group, as well as the Russian army, suffered heavy losses. A frustrated Prigozhin began to publicly complain about the lack of supplies, saying, quote, the Wagner PMC is walking around like a beggar, end quote, before posting a photo of stacks of dead Wagner fighters who, according to Yevgeny, had died from a lack of ammunition. This public calling out of the Russian army's lack of supplies brought the horror of the war and the indifference of the Russian government to the suffering and death of their own citizens into the living rooms of Russian civilians.
Yeah, I would actually say that it's an overabundance of ammunition that killed them. But yeah, internally that was. But they had bullets.
The situation got so bad that by May, Prigozhin said that the Wagner group was just going to fuck off and leave the battlefield if they weren't supplied with weapons and ammunition. And everyone knew that if Wagner pieced out, there was no way that the standard issue Russian army was going to accomplish shit on their own. Yevgeny, it must be said, did not mince a lot of words, by the way, saying, quote, now listen to me, bitches. These are somebody's fathers and somebody's sons. And those scum who don't give ammunition, bitch will eat their guts in hell. We have a 70, I don't know. That's the quote. I don't get it. We have a 70% ammunition shortage. Shoigu, Geremeshov, where the fuck is the ammunition? Look at them bitches. You sit in expensive clubs. Your children enjoy life. You make videos on YouTube. You think you're the masters of this life, that you have the right to dispose of their lives.
Okay, how was that, you guys? I feel like I said bitch too many times. Did I say bitch? I feel like I said bitch too many times.
A little bit.
It was like 4, right? Like
It was like four in 4 sentences, I think.
The first one was
Do
good.
you want workshop with like go back and forth with bitch and like something else like motherfuck or like
motherfuck? Oh, why didn't I think of motherfuck? Oh, should have thought of motherfuck.
Prigozhin began to change to become a critic of the Russian leadership in even broader terms, making regular critiques of Mother Russia that would absolutely not be allowed to be said by literally anyone else. By June, a dangerous amount of the Russian citizenry began to favor Prigozhin, which was a direct threat to Putin's power and authority. A survey in Russia put Prigozhin in the top 10 most trusted figures by the Russian public.
Putin's like, next time let's make these surveys out of polonium. What do you say?
Okay, when you're less trusted than the hot dog warlord, it's gotta be frustrating. You're the president.
Hoping to stifle Prigozhin and bring his private army to heel, the Ministry of Defense ordered Wagner to sign contracts with the military. This is a move which would have effectively folded the Wagner group into the Russian military officially. Prigozhin, again publicly declaring the incompetence of the Russian military leadership, declined to cede his private army, in part because it would have left Yevgeny personally vulnerable, and in part because it would have threatened the profitability of his warmongering mercenaries still operating in Africa.
Well, and in part because fucking duh. They came to him and they're like, hey, Putin wants to talk to you, but he also wants you to not have an army anymore first. It's the unrelated things, though. If you don't mind, could you sign this here?
On the 23rd of July, Prigozhin announced that the Russian military launched missile strikes at Wagner forces. And in that moment, Yevgeny declared, quote, the Council of Commanders of PMC Wagner has made a decision. The evil that the military leadership of the country brings must be stopped, end quote. This was the start of an armed conflict now between Russia and the Russian-backed paramilitary private army run by a former ex-con hot dog salesman. Now in open revolt, Prigozhin declared the invasion of Ukraine based on a series of propagandist lies, and he pulled back the curtain for anyone listening that the real reason for the war was for the enrichment of Russian oligarchs.
Also, hot dogs are bad for you, everybody. Too much salt.
Night.
The next day, on the 24th of June, Wagner forces marched into and crossed into Rostov Oblast, resulting in criminal charges being announced against Yevgeny for inciting an armed rebellion. Prigozhin then began to march on Moscow, engaging along the way in battles against Russian air assets, including military helicopters.
And for one glorious moment, Russia was living in a Yakov Smirnoff joke because in Soviet Russia, Ukraine invades you. Hey, if you got that joke, you should get the shingles vaccine, everybody. Just a quick heads up if you got it.
Thank you, Eli. I will put that on my calendar.
Yeah, you got to get it.
Good call.
It's important.
Also, I love that Prigozhin was just doing a pump fake at that point, like a bully in the hallway doing that fake punch. And Putin flinched and mobilized troops to defend Moscow. And then Putin got laughed at for the flinching, and he flew into a murderous rage, even more than his like baseline of resting murderous rage face. So like Prigozhin totally got the middle school win for that moment. We'll see what happens, but at that moment, win.
Putin, until now uncharacteristically silent, publicly declared his former friend was now acting in treason, and he vowed harsh steps to suppress the rebellion. At this point, there was a very weird kind of public back and forth, with Putin calling the rebellion a threat to the existence of Russia and Prigozhin defending his rebels as patriots, even as they were shooting down Russian helicopters and driving onward toward Moscow. And while this was going on, Prigozhin, despite the bluster, was busily negotiating. The rebellion was effectively over a day after it began, with Prigozhin securing a deal where he promised not to send his private army into Moscow, and Putin would allow Prigozhin to scurry off to Belarus.
Be careful, Putin. You give this guy a foot long, he'll take a mile.
Right, but this was clearly like the Elon buying Twitter of insurrections, right? He didn't really want to do it, but he talked too much. I mean, he didn't have as disastrous of results, but he didn't want to do it.
It turned out way better than Elon.
The thing is, though, Prigozhin didn't stay in Belarus, likely because Belarus is just a puppet state of Russia and it wouldn't be safe at all, and also because there was still a lot of money to be made with the Wagner Group operating in Africa. At this point, it's a little confusing because ostensibly Prigozhin had been sent to Belarus, but reports surfaced that he was back in Russia tying up loose, like oligarch business. Regardless of how or why, he ended up on an airplane flying from Moscow to St. Petersburg on August the 23rd of this year when, mysteriously, a bomb exploded on board while the plane was in flight, causing the plane to tumble from the sky and crash, killing all 10 passengers, including Yevgeny Prigozhin, and leaving the fate of the Wagner Group still in limbo.
That's right.
The opposite of mysterious.
No, Mr. Putin. We said mysteriously. We said we have no idea. There could have been anything. So if you had to summarize what you'd learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Air travel sucks everywhere.
See, could have been any reason. And are you ready for the quiz?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
All right, Tom. You've done an episode now on Yevgeny Prigozhin, and Noah did an episode on Vladimir Putin. Who should I do my next essay on? A hornet that is asleep on my eyeball. B, the big cartoon bomb I'm holding. Or C, Gamergate.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Well, it can't be the hornet that's asleep on your eyeball. You would make Anna kill that for you. So that can't be the answer. I'm going to go with C, Gamergate.
Oh, your wish is my command, Tom. Your wish is my command.
All right, Tom, which of the following is the best name for Prigozhin's strip club restaurant that you were talking about? A, the restaurant. B, Booby Tuesday. C, Blue Waffle House. Or D, Chick-fil-A.
Okay, those are all very good, but the only one I would actually go to is B, Booby Tuesdays.
Yes, obviously.
Right. You are correct about your opinion about which you would go with.
Very different kind of food poisoning.
I would eat the shit out of Chick-fil-A, let me tell you.
All right, Tom, if you're part of the Wagner Group, what's the worst equipment that can be issued from the catering department? A, a strafing dish. B, a serving trader. C, 3 tear gas. Tier is spelled differently there. And or D, a folding chairman. Folding chairman. Folded at the end.
I
there.
think A, strafing dish.
Strafing dish is incorrect. I'm sorry. It's 3-tier gas.
Yeah, no, that one works better written out.
Yeah, 3-tier
listeners, and that
gas.
means
Thought I had it.
that Cecil is our winner this week.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You could go next, Noah.
Oh, awesome. All right. Well, for Tom, Heath, Eli, and Cecil, I'm Noah. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We're going to be back next week, and by then, I'll be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can hear more from Tom and Cecil on cognitive dissonance and more from Heath, Eli, and myself on God-awful movies. And if you'd like to keep this show going, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave a 5-star review everywhere you can. And if you want to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes, be sure to check out citationpod.com.
And thank you one last time to all our wonderful sponsors. Wow. Well, Tony, it has been a magical night. It sure has, Carl. But you know, there's just one last thing left to do. That's right, Tony. There is.
I'm sorry, Carl.
No,
Carl?
Heath, we're in the middle of something here.
No, I know. Eli has it written in the notes that you sing the entirety of Frank Sinatra's My Way here at the end of the episode, but we can't afford those rights.
Oh, come on, you can't?
Nah, man, sorry. Expensive.
Oh, this is bullshit.
I know, man. We're actually just as heartbroken as you are.
Oh, I'll be in my goddamn trailer.
I just wanted to do a HelloFresh ad so my cats wouldn't starve.
Yeah, well, now the show is this. So, good job.
Fuck.
That you don't have.
Fuck.
Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely. And parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/getstarted. That's GREENLIGHT.com/getstarted.